Back in the day when I used to visit schools, when you could visit schools, kids would often ask me what my favorite book was. And that's always tricky. And I guess one of my answers is this: if I really enjoy writing a book, it becomes one of my favorites. And that's why I want to tell you about this book, Hanging Out with Jesus Again. Now, this book had its start years ago when I wrote two books called Best Mates and Best Mates 2, which were about Pip, Tomo, and Big Bart, three of Jesus' disciples of Philip, Thomas, and Bartholomew, who were best mates, who hung around on the edges of the disciples and made ridiculous comments and found themselves in ridiculous situations surrounding actual stories about the life of Jesus. Well, eventually, those two books were compiled together in a book called Hanging Out with Jesus, which came out, I suppose, a couple of years ago. And I always wanted to finish the story. The story only kind of went halfway through the life of Jesus. And one of the things I always wanted to do was to finish the story and to see where the adventures led Pip and Tomo and Big Bart. Partly because I thought it was fair enough to finish the story, and also because I just fell in love with the characters, particularly the ridiculous Big Bart and his ridiculous family and all the insane things that happened to him. And so, Hanging Out with Jesus Again finishes the story. Well, it takes the story through to the resurrection. Yeah? So you get these characters who, are goofy sometimes, having to deal with some very difficult things, particularly Jesus' crucifixion, but also coming out the other side of it. And Tomo in particular, having his doubting moment, and then in a slightly ridiculous fashion, having all of that resolved for himself. So I'd just like to recommend this book to you, Hanging Out with Jesus Again. You're going to love it. Your kids are going to love it. And if you want to put in their hands a novel, interesting, unique, out of the ordinary, out of the box, slightly ridiculous way of telling the story of Jesus that is still faithful to the scriptures, then I can't recommend anything better than this, Hanging Out with Jesus, one of my favorite books.